So welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, Michael.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so last week we dived in a bit about your new book, Choosing College, with Michael Horn, and we're talking about why students choose to go to college, what are some good reasons, what are some bad reasons, how could people, both parents and students, reframe the decision to make better decisions. Now, we talked a lot about the reasons students go, but while they're actually touring colleges and getting ready to apply, what advice do you give them at that point when they're making that decision?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is when you're on the college campus, step back first and ask yourself that why question and keep that in the front of your head as you're looking, because it's easy to get seduced, if you will, by the glamour of a dining hall, the tour guide who has extra energy and makes you feel right at home, the tantalizing prospect of being out of reach of your parents, whatever it might be that's sort of pulling you into that school, and make sure it's matching your why and that you've clarified that. So you almost have like a checklist in front of you as you're touring these campuses and can say, this fits, this doesn't, so you don't sort of go astray from where you actually are in life. Because I know from these tours, I've been in them myself, it's very easy to get seduced by something that sounds great, but actually isn't in line with the progress you're trying to make.
Excellent. Love it. So really getting down to the brass tacks, the nitty gritty, not the glamour and the marketing of the college tours themselves.
Yeah, and then you can ask better questions, right? Because you say, hey, I know that these three things are actually what's really important to me. I know that I need this sort of extracurricular, or I know I want a more diverse student body where I'm going to be able to reinvent myself among new people. Whatever those sorts of things are that have been central in your search, you're able to ask those questions with greater clarity. Now, there's a second part of this, which is maybe you're not there yet, right? You haven't done that homework. You're on the campus tour. Here, I would say the job is almost on your parent to say, gee, why did you like that campus and not this one, right? As you go for these different tours. And here you're basically saying, okay, I'm gravitating toward this campus. I wonder, it's in an urban environment. I'm just making this up. It's in an urban environment, has great sports teams, and the academics are okay. Is it the academics, is it the sports teams, or is it the urban life? And so you almost then say, let's go to another campus that has one of those things but is missing the other thing and see, does that still resonate? And basically force you to make priorities and trade-offs to see what are the things in almost their rank order of how they're important to you so that you can broaden your options and not be left stranded without a school at the end of this.
I love that, Michael, because you're really breaking it down to a scientific experimental process rather than having people make what's typically an emotional decision when there's real dollars at stake.
Yeah, and look, when I made my choice around college, I took a nap in the car coming back from a college visit, woke up and told my dad where I was applying and started on the essays right in the car. I don't think that's the best way to make this decision, right? It worked out okay for me, but I think you can be more rigorous about what is really driving you. When you say a school has energy, what does that mean? Ask yourself that question 5 times of why. Why is energy important? What does it mean? And dig in so that you don't settle for these surface level answers. And one of the best ways to do that and go beyond vague language is to actually give yourself trade-offs that you have to make by you say, this school feels like it has high energy, this school didn't. Okay, let's sample basically on some of the features of these two schools and figure out what are the ones that are actually tipping you to have that feeling.
I love that idea. And speaking of the decision about going to college versus not going to college, is also the idea of taking a gap year. And in the book, you talk quite a bit about that. Can you share more?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big thing that emerged to me is that many more students just actually don't have that fundamental understanding of who they are and why they're going at this point in their lives, and that they would benefit from a gap year. And when I say gap year, I don't mean gallivanting around Europe and just backpacking aimlessly, but really a structured year where you try out a variety of experiences to start to understand what you like and maybe more importantly, what you don't like. What are your strengths and abilities? And what are your passions? What really gets you excited and out of bed in the morning, ready to do more? And as you start to understand that through a gap year where you can actually earn money, so it's not only cheaper than paying college tuition, you can actually make some money, then it will inform your choices. And it's not to say college will never be right for you, but after you have much more information, then maybe college will be the right next step. I'll just add that my wife has been making fun of me about this one because she said, I can't believe it took you an entire book of researching and writing to figure out that a gap year might be important. But I think it's really emerged as something that many, many more students would benefit from looking at.
It's kind of funny. It can help them make a more informed decision about whether college is right for them or even necessary for them. And we find that a lot of students don't even end up in jobs that require a college degree. In the book, you say that 1 out of 3 ends up in that situation. 74% of students end up in a do what's expected of me job and end up transferring or dropping out. So why might not students finish their degrees or not complete their degrees altogether?
Yeah, look, college is a frustrating process for many. It's something that it's hard to navigate. They use terms that aren't familiar or don't make sense to large parts of the population. Tony Jack's book on this topic is a great resource if you want to learn more about how that is. The institutions are often complicated where it requires jumping back and forth between majors. You accumulate credits that don't count toward your major. A lot of students end up with tons of credits but not enough to actually graduate, which is totally counterintuitive. And they might take 6-7 years to graduate, running up a bill the whole time, not making money in the workforce. And so all these reasons contribute to dropping out. And what we found is that if you are going without that intrinsic passion around why you're there, so to do what someone else expects of you, for example, or to get away from something else, the moment it gets tough, you drop out. And what we know about student loans is that while they attract tons of headlines for being over $1.5 trillion, loans aren't necessarily a bad thing if you complete, but if you don't complete, they're actually brutal to pay back. And that's where the real default rates start to hit in, and it really starts to hang over the rest of your life, if you will. And so you just don't want to be in that situation. And so you want to have clarified your why so that when times get tough on a college campus, you have a breakup, you have a financial problem, you have an academic problem, whatever it might be, you can go back to that why and find that energy to stay enrolled.
I love it. Super important. And I agree. Absolutely. If you don't finish the degree, the tuition bill just comes just the same.
Yep, exactly right. And you don't have the degree to give you that bump in wages. Your other point is an important one also, which you said before, which is a lot of people go to college. They then end up in a job that doesn't require that college degree. That might be fine if it has other benefits for you, but be clear about that up front. It's not that you have to know exactly what you want to do the rest of your life, but if you really want it for a vocational reason, for a job, career reason, then be super explicit about it and don't make a decision that's not in accordance with that progress.
Well said. Well said. So to shift gears a little bit, are there any common misconceptions about the admission process or about college selection that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I'd say a big one is that people feel like it's never been more competitive to get into college. And on the one hand, that's true, right? If you're looking at one school, the admissions rate at a place like a Harvard or a Yale or a Stanford is at all-time lows. There's more applications, and they're basically taking in the same number of people. And as a result, it's 5-6%, whereas a generation ago, it was, triple that, what they were admitting. But if you look at the universe of college choices, it's actually in some ways never been an easier time to get in because what we're seeing is that a lot of people are applying to multiple schools because of things like the Common App that have enabled you to apply much more easily. And so your chances of getting into, say, a top tier school if you apply to 10 are extremely high in some ways. And so the math, if you look at the aggregate, is actually much easier. The second thing I think people don't realize is outside of the top few hundred schools, most of four-year colleges aren't actually that selective. And so if your goal is to get into college, you will get in. You will be able to find a school that you will get into. They might not even have very high standards, and you can find a place. The challenge is this: is it the right fit for you? And I think we ought to be, as students and parents, much choosier about the schools up front that we're applying to, and realizing that we're not praying for the school to select us. We want to be in a position where we're actually selecting the right school for us. And so flipping that script, I think, is incredibly important and a big misunderstanding.
I love both of the points that you just made because they're both around framing. I think you're right that as people apply to more and more schools, the acceptance rate drops. But if you're applying to more schools, that counteracts the acceptance rate at any one given school. You're improving your odds the more you apply to. And so it does become this endless arms race of just applying to more and more schools, which, the schools are the winners when it comes to the application fees on that. Yes. But at the same time, it is important to be selective about where you actually choose to apply. Are these schools you would actually want to go to? Have you toured them, for example, to circle back to something we covered earlier?
Yeah, and I think that's a big point, right? Which is, do not apply to a school just because you think you should do it or you should have a safety school on your list. Be excited about every single school. There are literally thousands of schools in this country, which I think most people don't also often realize, just the sheer number of them. Not all of them are a good fit for you. And so be just really strong about that, of saying, these are the right fit for me and I'm going to apply to them. And yes, that means maybe I throw in a few schools that are top-notch academics and it's going to be hard to get into, and I'm going to have a few safety schools, but they're not safety schools because if you got in, you'd still be excited. And that's the key, to still have that passion about it. Don't move. We saw a lot of students, they would start in the help me get into my best school job. They wouldn't get into their dream school, and all of a sudden they would fall into the help me do what's expected of me job. And they would just go because they felt like they still had to. And bad things happen when you're in that situation generally.
Of course, absolutely. Well, that was really well said. I think that's a great place to end off. Now, Michael, when does your book come out, Choosing College Again, and where's the best place for people to go to get it?
Yeah, so the book's out September 10th. So basically, as people are listening to this podcast, you can get it at your local bookstore, or of course Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you like to buy your books online. And if you want more information, you can go to michaelbhorn.com and learn more there as well.
And there's also choosing.college. You said you have an app there, right?
That's absolutely right. So folks who are interested in taking the app to learn about why they're going to school and some advice and easy tips out of that can go to choosing.college is literally the site. And we've got an app up there, and if you buy the book, it's free to use, which hopefully will be helpful to folks. And we'd love your feedback also.
Excellent, Michael. Well, thank you again for joining us on College Admissions Toolbox. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.